Alright guys, so day 2 on the wiring. I went ahead and did a little bit before I started filming. It's nothing I can't show you. So right here I've completed my rear harness extension. Or sorry, I shouldn't say rear harness, but rear wiring extensions. This is these wires here that are going to run up to the front. I've got 3 wires for the tail light, which is these 3 that are taped together. So that's my positive, negative, and then brake light. I've got 2 for the rear brake switch, which is this green and white. And then I've got my battery positive and negative terminals ran up here as well. For the rear brake switch, I made a mini harness as well. It's just those same 2 wires that are going into that harness. And I ran the brake line. the brake switch from the rear caliper. It just follows the rear brake line to right here. That was as long as those wires were, so I had to extend them. I've got 2 waterproof connectors here. Now, how I routed this, I was trying to figure this out yesterday. Luckily, the airbox on this bike, and I'm sure a lot of others, has a drain hole in it. Now it's kind of it looks like it's a big hole, but it's actually got like a cover to keep water from getting up in there. So it's got like this sloped angle to it, and it's basically like a U in there, inside of there, so that water won't be able to splash up in your filter. So you have to kind of play with the wires to get them routed in, but I'm pretty sure most MX bikes have a similar system, because if you get water or oil or whatever in the airbox, it would just fill up. So I ran it through the airbox drain, and this wire is just going to sit right here. I've already messed with it. It might hit the suspension if like I jumped hard, but even if it does, I don't think the springs are compressed enough to hurt it. Now the key thing about routing it this way is you got to remember that under load and offload, your swing arm is going to move up and down. So you want to make sure that your wiring, wherever you decide to run in this area, whatever wiring is going to come from the swing arm area like this up into the bike frame, you need to have enough length to cover your suspension travel. So make sure you got a little bit of slack. I already picked the bike up and compressed it and made sure that when it's picked up, this wire just has enough slack to straighten out, but not enough to tug on it. And then under load, it's not so much slack that it's going to hit the spring or rub into the tire chain over there. So this bike is going to be pretty similar to most MX bikes in the suspension travel. So you shouldn't need a ton of slack, just what I have here, basically just a little loop that's enough to run along the swing arm for a little bit and then come to your line if you're running this same exact setup. So that's this harness done. The rear light harness I also did and finished. I've got my plate light, which is this, brake light and running light, and then I just used sticky backs. I'm not sure what these are actually called, but you can get them at Home Depot. There's little square things. These are here. I'll probably have to replace these because these are for indoor use. But these zip tie mounting bases, you can get them at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever. There's little square pads that you can run a zip tie through. So they probably will fall off as soon as they get wet, but I'm fine with just getting this like this temporary. I can switch these out easily enough. So that's my rear harness. Got it tied in here, weatherproof connectors on it. So far all the rear wiring on the bike is done. I'm working it up to the front. The battery and battery tray I made are in here. With the seat on, I don't think this is going to move a whole lot, so I may just leave it as is, but if I hear it bouncing around a ton, I'll find another way to secure it even more. But for being just sheet metal, it works pretty good. So that's where I'm at, guys. I got all my so pretty much all my wiring is running through the airbox, and here you can see the harness. Right there, it's not taped up. I just started taping it right when it comes over the motor, basically. Try and help keep it together and off the motor where it could get hot. I'll route this as close to the frame as I can to keep the heat off of it. Probably run it pretty much with the clutch cables. I may zip tie it. But anyways, I I may go ahead and tape up this area a little bit just to keep it together, because all the harness basically spiders together right there in the air box. So all the different connections from the tail light, the rear brake switch, all that comes straight through the air box. So that's the wiring so far. I'll continue to film, and then my wiring here is going to pretty much follow the clutch cable. It's going to run up, or throttle cables, it's going to run up into the front of the triple tree here, and then I'll make all my fuse connections and everything up in the headlight area. I'm going to try and relocate the ECU behind the headlight because I really don't like it exposed where it is. I don't know, it might not be doable though, but we'll get to that when we come to it. Alright, so I had to readjust the ECU. I went ahead and threw on the tank. Now that I've got my wiring underneath here, I already bolted it down, but it's what I showed you before. It's the same path. It's just through underneath the tank and through the right side for the rear, and everything from the left side. It's going to come here. I cleaned up the steering neck a little bit because I had a few more connectors. I had these two connectors, this is the ECU map switch plug. You can put on this bike, it has 3 different ECU maps. You can change by switching this plug out, and then this is I think the diagnostic one, but either way they're both capped off, so even if they get some water or whatever on them, it's not going to hurt them. The ECU is also weather sealed. I'm just really hoping that I had to lower it down a little. I had it a little higher before, but the tank butts into it, so the only issue there, and it looks bad like that right now, but with the fairing on, it's pretty hard to notice. You can see the wiring coming out, but I'll show you. So here's what the radiator side panel lines up there on the tank. So yeah, the shroud pretty much covers it for the most part, unless you're really looking for it. So it doesn't really look that bad visually, other than the harness right there, but even with the ECU moved in front, you'd see the harness running along the steering neck right there, so doesn't really change it much cosmetically, and I just have to keep an eye on it and hope that it doesn't overheat being right behind the radiator. But as long as I keep moving and don't try and just sit still, it should be alright. So I moved the wiring harness and I cleaned up this because when I had those other two connectors, when I completely locked the steering, right now it's locked and it barely has clearance. It barely taps into them, which I don't think I'll ever really be at full left lock or right lock for that instance. Probably not very often, so I'm not worried about it breaking the connectors or anything. And it's pretty much right even with it where it locks. I can see the steering lock right here. That's like where it hits into the frame, and it's pretty much right dead even with the connectors, so it's not really even smashing them. It's just laying right on top of them. So that should be fine to run like that permanently. I've got my Baja harness wired up down here. This is the one that splits in between the green that I added in. It's just running up behind the ECU, and then the power plug for it's right here. Runs up. Kind of routed it between the radiator and the bottom of the frame there. So it's got heat resistant tubing, so it should be alright. So that's all done. So now I just need to start working on wiring everything together, adding my fuses, and hope everything works the first time. Because if not, it's going to suck troubleshooting this system. So as I'm wiring stuff up, I'll show you how I'm doing it. The only wires I need to extend are the front brake switch right here. The rear brake switches already ran up to the front, so now I can just focus on getting all my wiring done right up here, and I'll try and make the harness up here as small as possible, and I'll quick disconnect. So that's it, guys. Let me start with the wiring, and I'll go over it with you guys when I get farther along. We're back. Got my wiring sorted. I had a hard time with the brake switches for some reason because I was looking at them wrong, which I feel stupid for, but I've got a test set up here. This isn't the battery from the bike, it's just a spare battery from that DRZ over there that I had free. So I've got the brake switches wired together. This was just to test them. So there's the running light and plate light. I've also got the running light tied in with that to test it. So when I hit the rear brake, it brightens up like it should. So rear brake switch is working, and then I'm about to grab the front brake here, test it. Bingo! There we go. And the front brake works. So both brake switches work. So the problem I had that some of you may also run into is that I was being stupid and thinking the brake switches were positive and negative, which isn't the case. You're basically, what these switches do is they're just an open circuit, and then when you squeeze the brake, it connects the circuit. So you want to wire, it doesn't really matter which color wire on each. These are actually different brand brake switches. One's Baja Designs and the other is, who was it? It's a rear set company, can't think of their name, but they're different brand brake switches, so the wiring on them was actually different. But that doesn't matter, because so all you're doing with these switches is completing your positive circuit. So one side of the circuit you leave open and just tie it together, so that either hitting the rear or the front will complete the circuit for the positive side and light up the brighter rear. So there's that part of the wiring done. So basically all the rear lighting at this point is done, other than tying it together. And I'm about to start doing my switch wiring, which I'll try and go over, but every switch is going to be slightly different. So unless you buy the exact same setup as me, it's not going to be the same, but I'll try and tell you how I did my switch wiring. So just to cover all the bases, these two leads are the bike's power from the stator, these will only have power when the bike is on and running, and this is what my primary power source is going to be for the headlight and tail light. And then these two leads that I've got the positive tape up on, this is the battery power. So all I'm going to do is wire the power from the battery to one side of the turn signal and the power from the bike to the other side of the turn signal, so that I can switch between them, which I showed you already. One side of the signal to the left will be positive, to the right will be, to the left will be the bike's power, to the right will be the battery. So I gotta figure out the wiring on that though, so that's gonna take a little more trial and error. The wiring did not go nearly as easily as I thought. I got it all figured out. The harness is still apart because I had an issue, and now it's too late to try and fix the issue. The issue is that the battery power works fine, but the bike side, I haven't been able to pull power from it yet. So there's something I'm missing or overlooking, and I'm pretty tired. So I'm just gonna call it a night for now. I'll start working on the last little bit tomorrow. I've got majority of it finished, so. And I wired it up, just like I said, battery on one side of the switch, and the bike is going to be on the other once I can figure out why I'm not being able to pull power from it. But I'll figure it out tomorrow, and I'll try and go over the wiring once I get it sorted, because I'll have a better handle on what I did. But a lot of it was just testing and seeing what worked and didn't, and blowing a lot of fuses, so I'll figure it out.